I have 12 minutes to plate this dish and win the biggest competition of my life. But there's one problem. I can't reach the counter anymore. My belly, this massive, undeniable obstacle, presses against the edge of the stainless steel workspace, forcing me to lean awkwardly to the side. Every movement takes twice as long as it should. I'm gasping for breath, just trying to arrange garnishes on a plate. The head judge, Chef Marcella, glances at her watch, then at me. Her expression says everything her words don't need to. "You're running out of time, Noah." I wipe my forehead with my sleeve and try to move faster, but my body won't cooperate. When did I become this person? When did my greatest asset, my ability to move gracefully through a kitchen, become my greatest liability? The answer is complicated, but I know exactly when it started. Subscribe and comment where you're watching from. This 100-pound spiral started with just one bite. 5 years ago, I was a different man entirely. At 28, I weighed a lean 170 pounds, with the kind of physique that came from standing on your feet 12 hours a day and treating your body like the temple it deserved to be. I could lift heavy stock pots without breaking a sweat. I could dance through a busy kitchen during dinner rush, pivoting between stations with the precision of a ballet dancer. I was good. No, I was exceptional. My restaurant, Noah's Table, had just earned its first major review in the city's food magazine, 4.5 stars. The critic called my braised short ribs transcendent and my chocolate souffle a religious experience. I remember reading that review 3 times, my chest swelling with pride each time. This was it. This was what I'd worked for since culinary school. Recognition, validation, proof that I belonged among the elite. But success brought something else with it. Hunger, not the physical kind, at least not at first. I'm talking about ambition, the hunger to be even better, to create even more extraordinary dishes, to push boundaries that other chefs wouldn't dare approach. And that meant tasting, constantly tasting. I'd always tasted my food, of course. Every chef does. You can't cook without knowing how your flavors balance, how your seasonings marry together, how each component contributes to the whole. But something changed after that review. I started taking extra bites. Just to be sure, I'd tell myself. Just to make absolutely certain this dish is perfect. 1 extra bite of the braised pork belly I was developing. 2 extra spoonfuls of the cream sauce I was perfecting. An entire dessert portion, because how could I possibly send something to a customer without knowing exactly how it would taste from first bite to last? It seemed harmless. It seemed like dedication, but I should have known better. Small choices always matter. 6 months after that review, I'd gained 15 pounds. I noticed, of course. My chef's coat felt a bit snugger. My face looked a little rounder in the mirror, but I rationalized it away effortlessly. I'm eating well because I'm creating well, I told myself. This is the price of greatness. Besides, I was still active, still on my feet all day, still moving, still cooking, still living the life I loved. 15 pounds was nothing, except it didn't stop at 15. My ambition grew alongside my waistline. I started developing a new menu, something bold, something that would put every other restaurant in the city to shame. It meant more experimentation, more tasting, more late nights in the kitchen surrounded by butter, cream, sugar, and every indulgent ingredient known to culinary arts. I'd finish a service at midnight, and instead of going home to sleep, I'd stay behind to test new recipes. I'd eat full portions of what I was creating, telling myself I needed to understand the complete dining experience. How can I serve something if I don't know how it feels to eat an entire dish? The logic was sound. The execution was destroying me. My sous chef, Maria, started making comments, gentle ones at first. "Chef, maybe you should take these samples home to Lily," she'd suggest, referring to my girlfriend. "She'd love to try your new creations." I'd wave her off with a smile. "Lily's watching her figure for her sister's wedding. I'll finish these." The truth was, I didn't want to share. These moments, alone in my kitchen, tasting my creations, feeling the rush of flavors across my tongue. These were my moments, my reward for working so hard. Food became more than fuel or even craft. It became comfort, validation, love, and I was consuming it at an alarming rate. By the end of that first year, I'd gained 40 pounds. I had to buy new chef's coats. "Noah, we need to talk." Lily stood in our kitchen doorway, arms crossed, her expression somewhere between concerned and frustrated. It was a Saturday morning, and I was making myself a light breakfast of brioche French toast with bourbon maple syrup and mascarpone cream. For research, obviously. "What's up, babe?" I asked, flipping the toast with practiced ease. "You're eating yourself into an early grave," she said bluntly. The spatula froze in my hand. "That's dramatic." "Is it?" She walked closer, her eyes fixed on my midsection. "Noah, you've gained at least 50 pounds this year. Your breathing is labored when you walk upstairs. Last week, you couldn't tie your shoes without sitting down." "I've been busy." "You've been eating," she interrupted. "Constantly. I love you, and I love your passion for cooking, but this isn't passion anymore. This is something else." I felt heat rising in my chest, anger mixed with shame. "My weight doesn't affect my cooking," I said defensively. "If anything, I'm creating better dishes now than I ever have. The restaurant is thriving. Reservations are booked 3 weeks out. The critics love us." "But are you happy?" she asked softly. "Really happy?" I didn't answer. How could I explain that I was happy, deliriously so, when I was cooking, when I was tasting, when I was lost in the creative process? How could I make her understand that the weight was just an unfortunate side effect? "I'm fine, Lily," I said finally. "I promise. I'll be more careful." She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. "But please, be careful. I don't want to lose you." I should have listened to her. I should have recognized the warning signs. But I didn't, because 3 days later, I received the email that would change everything. "Dear Chef Noah Rivera, it is our pleasure to invite you to compete in the 15th annual Biggest Chef Competition, a premier culinary event that brings together the most talented chefs from across the region." I read the email 3 times, my heart pounding harder with each pass. The Biggest Chef Competition. Every serious chef knew about it. It was the ultimate test of skill, creativity, and endurance, a 2-day gauntlet that would push competitors to their absolute limits. Winners didn't just get a trophy, they got recognition, media coverage, opportunities that could launch a career into the stratosphere. Past winners had gone on to open restaurants in New York, Paris, Tokyo. They'd written best-selling cookbooks, hosted television shows, become household names. This was my chance. This was everything I'd been working toward. I replied to the email immediately, accepting the invitation before I could second-guess myself. 6 months. I had 6 months to prepare. But here's what I didn't consider. 6 months was also plenty of time for bad habits to get even worse. The competition guidelines were intense. Competitors would face mystery basket challenges, time constraints, required techniques, and unexpected obstacles. You needed to be fast, precise, creative, and physically capable of handling the demands of a professional kitchen under extreme pressure. I threw myself into preparation with the same obsessive energy I'd applied to everything else. I practiced complex techniques. I worked on plating speed. I developed backup plans for every conceivable ingredient combination, but I also kept tasting. I need to know these flavors inside and out, I rationalized. I need to understand every possible variation. Maria watched with growing concern as I packed away entire practice dishes, one after another. "Chef," she said one evening, "maybe you should focus on smaller portions. You know, for the tasting." "I need the complete experience," I insisted, finishing off a full plate of seared duck breast with cherry gastrique. She didn't push further. Nobody did. And that was the problem. My weight continued climbing. 70 pounds gained, then 80, then 90. My chef's coats no longer fit properly, even the new ones. I had to special order larger sizes, telling myself it was temporary, that I'd lose the weight after the competition when I had more time to focus on fitness. My breathing became more labored, my movements slower, my stamina depleted, but I was in denial about all of it. Until the day I couldn't fit into the chair at the pre-competition meeting. The meeting was held at a restaurant downtown, where all 20 competitors gathered for orientation and rule clarification. I arrived early, confident, and eager. Then I tried to sit in the standard restaurant chair they'd arranged around the tables. It didn't work. The chair had arms, and my body, specifically my 100-pound heavier body, didn't fit between them comfortably. I had to angle myself awkwardly, sucking in my stomach, feeling the wood pressing painfully against my hips. I was stuck. The other chefs noticed. Some looked away politely. Others stared with poorly concealed shock. One of the organizers rushed over with an armless chair, her expression apologetic, but also pitying. That look burned into my memory. Pity. For the first time since this journey began, I felt something other than confidence about my upcoming performance. I felt fear. What had I done to myself? The morning of the competition, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and barely recognized my reflection. My face was round, my neck thick. My belly protruded so far forward that I had to lean back slightly just to see my feet. My thighs rubbed together when I walked, and my arms, once lean and muscular, now jiggled when I moved them. I'd gained 580 pounds in less than 2 years. 750 pounds of chef standing where 170 pounds of chef used to be. But there was no time for self-pity. The competition was starting in 2 hours. I arrived at the venue with my knife kit and my determination, pushing aside the nagging voice in my head that whispered I'd made a terrible mistake. The first challenge was announced. Prepare a 3-course meal using ingredients from a mystery basket to be completed in 90 minutes. I could do this. I'd done it 1,000 times in my own kitchen, except my own kitchen didn't have cameras, judges, and 19 other talented chefs working at lightning speed around me. The timer started. I opened my mystery basket and began to work. 30 minutes into the first challenge, I was already behind. The problem wasn't my skill or my creativity. My dish concept was solid: a pan-seared halibut with cauliflower puree, Brussels sprouts, and a lemon beurre blanc. The problem was my body. I couldn't move quickly enough between stations. Every trip to the pantry for ingredients left me winded. When I needed to grab something from a lower shelf, bending down became a calculated maneuver. Taking precious seconds I didn't have to spare. My hands were shaking, not from nerves, but from the physical exertion of simply existing in this space. Around me, other chefs moved with fluid grace, their bodies responding instantly to their mind's commands. I watched a woman half my age sprint to the spice cabinet, grab what she needed, and return to her station in seconds. It would have taken me 3 times as long. 45 minutes remaining, the head judge announced. My halibut wasn't even in the pan yet. I forced myself to focus, to move faster, to ignore the burning in my lungs and the ache in my lower back. Just keep cooking. Just finish. I managed to plate my dish with 30 seconds to spare, but I knew. It wasn't my best work. The plating was sloppy. The sauce was rushed. One of my Brussels sprouts was undercooked because I hadn't had time to taste and adjust. When the judges evaluated my plate, their comments were diplomatic but clear. Technically proficient, but lacking the refinement we'd expect from a chef of your reputation. I nodded, accepting the critique, but inside I was screaming. This isn't me. This isn't who I am. Except it was. This was exactly who I'd become. Day 2 of the competition brought the ultimate challenge, a 5-hour marathon where we had to prepare a complete tasting menu, 6 courses for the judges. 5 hours sounds like plenty of time. It wasn't. Not when you're carrying an extra 100 pounds. Not when every movement requires effort. Not when your body actively works against you instead of with you. I started strong, my muscle memory carrying me through the first 2 courses. But by the 3rd course, a delicate pasta dish that required hand-rolling and careful attention, I was struggling. My back screamed in protest. My feet throbbed. My breathing came in heavy gasps. The other competitors noticed. I could feel their glances, their unspoken questions. How did he let himself get like this? Can he even finish? I pushed through the 4th course, then the 5th. But the 6th course, my signature chocolate soufflé, the dish that had launched my career, became my undoing. Soufflés are unforgiving. They require precise timing, exact temperatures, gentle handling. You can't rush them, you can't force them, and you absolutely cannot make them when you're so physically exhausted that your hands won't stop shaking. I'd made this soufflé 1,000 times. Maybe 10,000. I could make it in my sleep. But that day, in that competition, with my body failing me at every turn, I couldn't make it work. The first batch collapsed. Overbeaten egg whites probably, though it might have been oven temperature or any of a dozen other variables I was too exhausted to properly monitor. 90 minutes remaining. I started again, forcing my trembling hands to work more carefully, more precisely. This batch looked better. I got them into the oven, set my timer, and allowed myself 30 seconds to lean against the counter and catch my breath. That's when I felt it. A sharp pain in my chest, radiating down my left arm. Panic flooded through me. Not now. Please, not now. The pain subsided after a few seconds. Probably just muscle strain. Probably nothing serious. But it was enough to shatter my concentration completely. The soufflés came out flat. Again. 60 minutes remaining. I had one more chance. My third attempt at the soufflé was my last hope. I worked with mechanical precision, blocking out everything else. The other chefs, the cameras, the judges watching with increasingly concerned expressions. Just finish. Just get it done. The soufflés went into the oven. While they baked, I finished plating my other 5 courses, arranging them on the presentation table with care that belied my inner chaos. The timer went off. I opened the oven door, and for the first time that day, something went right. The soufflés were perfect, risen, golden, beautiful. I pulled them out carefully, my hands steadier now that I could see the finish line. 15 minutes remaining. I had to plate them, garnish them, present them to the judges. 15 minutes was enough, except for one problem. To reach the presentation table where the judges were seated, I had to walk 20 feet across the competition kitchen. 20 feet. It shouldn't have been a challenge, but I was carrying 6 delicate soufflés, and my body was at its absolute limit. I lifted the tray, feeling the weight of it in my arms. I took one step, then another. My vision blurred slightly. The exhaustion, the stress, the sheer physical toll of the last 2 days, it all crashed over me at once. I stumbled, the tray tilted. 3 of the 6 soufflés slid off and hit the floor with a sickening splat. For a moment, the entire kitchen went silent. I stared at the destroyed desserts, at the chocolate pooling on the pristine white floor, at the culmination of 2 years of work and preparation literally melting at my feet. 10 minutes remaining. I couldn't remake them. There wasn't time. I carried the 3 surviving soufflés to the judges' table and placed them down with as much dignity as I could muster. "I apologize," I said, my voice hoarse. I couldn't complete the full presentation." Chef Marcella looked at me with that same expression from day one. Pity. "We'll evaluate what you've provided," she said gently. I returned to my station and waited for the final results. When they announced the winners, I wasn't surprised. Second place, Chef Noah Rivera. Second place, silver medal, first loser. I'd lost by the smallest margin, just 3 points out of a possible 100. The judges' comments made it clear what had cost me the victory. Chef Rivera's technical skill and creativity are undeniable. However, incomplete presentations and time management issues prevented him from achieving first place. Time management issues, that's what they called it. But I knew the truth. It wasn't time management. It was me. My body. The choices I'd made every single day for 2 years that had led me to this moment. I accepted my silver medal with a smile that felt like it might crack my face in half. I shook hands with the gold medal winner, a young chef from Portland who'd moved through the competition like it was choreographed. And then I left. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I could bring myself to turn the key. Second place, all that work, all that preparation, all that sacrifice. And I'd lost because I couldn't walk 20 feet without stumbling. The anger came first. Hot, consuming rage at myself, at my weakness, at the unfairness of it all. Then came the grief. I cried in that parking lot, big, ugly sobs that shook my entire body, mourning not just the competition, but everything I'd lost along the way. My health, my relationship with Lily, which had been strained to the breaking point, my self-respect, my identity as a chef who could do anything in a kitchen. When the tears finally stopped, I felt hollowed out, empty, but also strangely clear-headed for the first time in months. I drove home in silence, my mind replaying the last 2 years in excruciating detail. Every extra bite I'd taken, every time I told myself it didn't matter, every warning sign I'd ignored. When I walked into my apartment, Lily was waiting on the couch. She took one look at my face and knew. "You didn't win," she said softly. "Second place." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. She patted the couch beside her. I sat down, and the furniture groaned under my weight. "I'm sorry, Noah." "I'm not," I said, and realized I meant it. I needed to lose. I needed this to happen. She looked at me with surprise. Because if I'd won, I continued, I would have convinced myself that none of this mattered, that the weight didn't affect my cooking, that I could keep going like this indefinitely. And now I know the truth. The truth was simple and terrible. Small choices had destroyed me. Not one big decision, not one moment of weakness, just thousands of tiny choices made day after day that had accumulated into a transformation I never intended and couldn't reverse without facing what I'd done. Over the next few days, I did something I'd been avoiding for 2 years. I looked back through my photos. There I was at 170 pounds, lean and proud, holding the 4.5-star review. 6 months later, 185 pounds, still looking healthy but with softer edges. 1 year later, 210 pounds, my face fuller, my belly starting to show. 18 months, 340 pounds, visible strain in my smile, visible exhaustion in my eyes. And now, 750 pounds, a different person entirely. But here's what struck me as I looked at those photos. There was never a single moment where everything changed. It was gradual, incremental, invisible day to day. 1 extra bite became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became entire extra meals. Just this once became just today, became just this week, became my normal. That's how it happens. That's how small choices become life-changing consequences. I returned to my restaurant a week after the competition. The staff had watched the broadcast. They knew what happened. Maria pulled me aside during prep. "Chef, can I tell you something?" "Of course." She took a deep breath. "We were all worried about you for months, but none of us knew how to say anything without offending you or crossing a line." "You should have said something," I said quietly. "Would you have listened?" I thought about that. Honestly considered it. "Probably not," I admitted. "That's what we figured." She looked down at her cutting board. "We watched you change. And we couldn't stop it. It was like watching someone drown in slow motion." Her words hit harder than any judge's critique, because she was right. I had been drowning, and I'd convinced myself I was swimming. That night, I sat down and made a list. Not a diet plan, not a workout schedule, not a list of restrictions and rules. Just a simple inventory of the choices that had led me here. Eating full portions instead of tastes, using food as comfort instead of fuel, ignoring physical warning signs, prioritizing immediate pleasure over long-term health, believing that my talent could overcome my physical limitations. Looking at that list, I realized something important. Every single item was a choice, not a mistake, not bad luck, not genetics or metabolism or any of the things I'd blamed when I'd bothered to think about my weight at all. Choices. Mine, which meant the solution was also mine. I couldn't undo 2 years of damage overnight. I couldn't magic away 100 pounds with willpower alone, but I could start making different choices. Small ones. 1 bite instead of 1 plate. A walk around the block instead of another hour in front of the TV. Water instead of wine. Awareness instead of denial. The same way small bad choices had built my prison, small good choices could build my freedom. It would take time, probably years, but I had time. I was only 33 years old. I had decades of cooking ahead of me, if I wanted them. And I did want them, desperately. 3 months after the competition, I did something I'd never done before. I wrote about it. Not a cookbook or a recipe collection, but a raw, honest account of my experience. How ambition and passion had twisted into something destructive. How I'd lost myself in pursuit of greatness and found only a body I didn't recognize. I posted it on my restaurant's blog, expecting maybe a few dozen people to read it. It went viral within 24 hours. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from people who saw themselves in my story. Chefs who'd struggled with the same tasting-turned-binging cycle. Office workers who'd let stress eating consume them. Parents who'd lost themselves in caretaking and forgotten to care for themselves. Everyone has their version of just one more bite. For some, it's food. For others, it's spending, drinking, working, scrolling through social media. The substance changes, but the pattern is the same. Small choices that feel insignificant in the moment. Repeated until they become habits. Habits that become identity. And then one day you look in the mirror and ask, how did I get here? I'm writing this now, 6 months after the competition. I weigh 700 pounds, down 50 from my peak. It's not dramatic. It's not Instagram worthy. It won't make headlines. But it's progress. Real, sustainable progress built on small daily choices. I still cook. I still taste. But I've learned the difference between tasting and eating. One small spoonful is enough to understand a flavor. I don't need to eat the entire dish to know if it's good. I've started exercising, not aggressively, not obsessively, but consistently. 20 minutes of walking each day, some basic strength training, nothing extreme, because extreme is what got me into this mess in the first place. Extreme ambition, extreme indulgence, extreme denial. Now I'm learning to live in the middle, in balance, in awareness. Lily and I broke up 3 weeks after the competition, not because she stopped loving me, but because she couldn't watch me destroy myself anymore, and I couldn't blame her. But last month she called. I read your blog posts, she said. All of them. I'd been posting weekly updates on my journey. Nothing dramatic, just honest reflections on the challenges and small victories of trying to rebuild a relationship with food and my body. What did you think? I asked. I think you're finally being honest with yourself. We met for coffee, just coffee, nothing more, and talked for 3 hours. She told me she'd been worried I'd never acknowledge the problem, that I'd keep spiraling until something catastrophic happened. I couldn't save you, she said. You had to save yourself. She was right. No one could have stopped my trajectory. Not Lily, not Maria, not anyone. I had to hit my own bottom. I had to face my own consequences. I had to choose to change. If you're listening to this story, you might be wondering what the point is. Maybe you're struggling with your own version of just one more bite. Maybe you're watching someone you love spiral and feeling helpless. Maybe you're just curious about how someone can gain 100 pounds in 2 years and not notice. Here's what I want you to understand. It's not about the weight. The weight was just a symptom. The real problem was that I'd lost control of my choices without realizing it. I'd convinced myself that what I did in each individual moment didn't matter, that one bite, one meal, one day couldn't possibly have significant consequences. But life isn't made up of big moments. It's made up of small ones, thousands and thousands of small moments where you choose who you want to be. And those choices accumulate. Every single one of them matters. Last week, I received another email, an invitation to next year's biggest chef competition. My first instinct was to delete it. Why would I put myself through that again? Why risk another humiliating failure? But then I thought about it differently. What if I accepted the invitation, but I used the next year to prepare properly? Not just my recipes and techniques, but my body, my health, my relationship with food. What if I used this as motivation to make better choices every day? Not extreme choices, not unsustainable restrictions, just small, consistent, conscious choices. One day at a time, one meal at a time, one bite at a time. So I wrote back, "Thank you for the invitation. I accept. I'm standing in my kitchen right now as I finish recording this. There's a pan on the stove with tonight's dinner, grilled chicken breast with roasted vegetables. Simple, satisfying, appropriately portioned. A year ago, I would have made chicken smothered in cream sauce with mashed potatoes and finished it with a full dessert. Tonight, I'm making different choices. Tomorrow, I'll make them again. And the day after that. Because that's how transformation happens. Not in dramatic revelations or sudden changes, but in the accumulation of small, consistent choices made over time. I lost the biggest chef competition because I couldn't control my portions, but I'm going to win my life back because I've finally learned that I can. Control your portions before they control you. That's the lesson I paid £580 to learn. I'm sharing it with you for free. Make it count. If this story hit home, subscribe for more real transformation journeys. And drop a comment, what's your one more bite? Let's keep each other accountable. Remember, small choices add up. Make them count.